Let's face it, we're in trouble. It's recently reported that the average American only saves 5% of their income. The median savings for those under 33 years old is just $3,240, and nearly 1 in 4 households has absolutely no emergency savings at all. But since you decided to watch this video, all this can stop today. Here are 6 super simple strategies that you could use starting today if you want to save $10,000 fast. And best of all, it costs you absolutely nothing. I found that when it comes to any financial milestone, it helps to break down exactly how much you want and in what time frame. Step 1. Break it down. Setting a goal to make $10,000 as quickly as possible can be tricky because it doesn't give you a clear finish line. You're left with an indefinite timeline. What really works is setting a practical goal with a clear timeline for achieving the goal. Let's say you're aiming to save $10,000 over the next year. In that scenario, you'd break it down like this. Aim for $833 each month, which boils down to $27.40 every day, $1.40 per hour, or even down to 2 cents a minute. Okay, maybe you don't need to go that far, but you get the idea. Breaking down your goal within a specified timeline gives you actionable steps that you could begin working towards on a smaller scale. Saving $10,000 seems like a daunting task, but when you break it down to $27.40 per day, it seems a lot more doable. And then from there, you can move on to Step 2. Start right now. I know this sounds like common sense, but you wouldn't be surprised how many people think of a great financial goal, get very excited about starting, and then do nothing about it. Maybe you receive a distracting text that makes you forget all about this, and then you think to yourself, I'll just start tomorrow. Or maybe your upcoming expenses pile up, and you decide, it's probably best to start next week after I buy the new Street Fighter game for PS5. Regardless of the excuse, wasting time getting started is hurting your finances. From my experience, the initial excitement for doing something new carries the most energy, and then within about a day, that excitement begins to wear off. And then you're left with the reality that your entire life has just become a giant procrastination. However, by starting right now, or basically as soon as the video is over, you'll at least begin to build up some momentum. And once you get that ball rolling, it'll be a little bit harder to quit. So in terms of how to start, the first thing that you could do is budget. The fact is, if you're going to save an extra $27.40 every single day, you need to know exactly where your money is going and how much money is going into and out of your account. Without it, it's kind of like you're throwing darts around the house blindfolded and hoping you don't poke anyone's eye out. Budgeting is not as hard as people make it seem, at least in principle. All you need to do is make an account with a free money tracking platform like Mint or Rocket Money that aggregates all of your information into one place. And then from there, you can see exactly where your money is going in real time. I like to use Mint, which comes with a really good mobile app. You can easily connect all your credit cards and bank accounts in one place, which makes tracking expenses really easy. The benefit of doing this is that by tracking where your money is going, you're going to be able to better pinpoint all the random, miscellaneous small expenses that add up over time. Like, did you know that the average American spends $18,000 a year on non-essential discretionary purchases? Or chances are you're spending more than $200 a month on useless subscriptions that you don't even use. When you really get into the weeds of your budget, strange things begin to happen. It's like the personal finance equivalent of discovering the Matrix. You notice things you never noticed before. All you need to do is track your spending for the next 30 to 60 days, and then cut back on everything you don't absolutely need to buy. I also like to sum up my basic monthly expenses so I know exactly how much money I need to earn to keep the lights on and to put food on the table. Now let's talk about the next thing you can do. Cut back. Sounds simple, right? Well, it actually is quite simple. In terms of what to expect, one survey found that it was the easiest to cut back on the following 10 spending categories: eating out, alcohol, credit card interests, clothes, electricity, cigarettes, heating or AC, unreturned items, convenience, and the lottery. Just think about that. Almost all of those items are pretty much discretionary that you directly control. Like eating at home versus going out to a restaurant, avoiding alcohol, paying down credit card interest, and turning off the lights when you're not using them, and the list goes on. But if cutting back on these things sounds horrible to you because you enjoy the finer pleasures in life, I have another solution. Look at your most common recurring expenses and see if you can get the exact same thing for cheaper. Take car insurance, for example. Car insurance is something we all get because we need to, and because we don't want to be stuck with an expensive accident. It's not something we derive enjoyment or pleasure from, so the only thing that matters is the price we pay and how much coverage we get. With 30 minutes of work, I pretty much guarantee you could find the exact same coverage for less than you're currently paying. From there, take a look at your internet and cell phone bill. There are also basic services for which you can easily find a cheaper provider. There are so many different alternatives right now that could save you a ton of money. Just apply this to everything that you spend money on. And sometimes just calling and asking for a discount is all it takes to begin cutting back. Trust me, most companies will go a long way to retain a loyal customer, even if it means giving you a 30% monthly discount. It's also incredibly important to realize that when it comes to this step, saving an extra dollar goes a lot further than earning an extra dollar. Let me explain. When you earn $1, you're going to have expenses like traveling to and from work, gas, insurance, wear and tear on the car, and taxes, which could easily leave you with only 75 cents net in your pocket. But when you save $1, you get to keep that $1 in full immediately. That's why saving money is so powerful. To put that in context, if you go out and spend $50 on a meal, you would have to earn $67 before tax to be able to pay for it. But if you decide just not to get that meal at all, then you have $50 left over in your pocket right now for you to do whatever you want with. However, I also understand that extensive budgeting and shopping for discounts isn't for everyone. There is a much simpler way to save money, so simple that it sounds extremely obvious. Pay yourself first. This comes from the philosophy that most people first spend their money on housing, transportation, food, and whatever else they buy, and then they save whatever's left over. But paying yourself first flips this idea on its head. With this, you'll automatically pay yourself a certain amount right off the top, and then you'll get to freely spend whatever's left over. Let's not kid ourselves. The average person is not tracking what they make, they aren't budgeting, and they have no idea how much they spend in a month. This will have the most immediate impact in terms of how much that person is able to save. On top of that, from what I've seen, the average American and Canadian household doesn't necessarily have an income problem, they have a spending problem. And expenses will always go up as your income rises. So no matter how much money you make, you're always going to be in the exact same spot, except probably with a newer iPhone. But just consider that almost 50% of people who make above $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck, which is only slightly lower than those who make between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. That goes to show you that spending habits are largely the same in proportion to how much money you make. And that's all because we succumb to what's known as lifestyle inflation. This is simply what happens when you earn more, spend more, and then need to earn more to be able to spend more. As you can see, it's a vicious cycle that can be really hard to break out of. So automate your savings. Move it before you think about it. And once it's out of sight, it's out of mind. But in terms of how to cut back on spending so you can actually save $27.40 a day, assuming you want to hit $10,000 in a year, here are a few ideas. First, housing. According to the Consumer Expenditure Survey, housing takes up the largest portion of the average budget. So if you could find a way to reduce this, you're set. I know it sounds easier said than done, but perhaps you'd find a way to rent out a spare bedroom or your finished basement. Maybe you're able to ask your landlord for a reduction in rent or find a cheaper place when your lease ends. If you own a home, like I mentioned earlier, you could shop around for better insurance rates, and you could also adjust the thermostat when you're not using it. You have a ton of ways of lessening your cost, and by implementing just a few of these, you should be able to save an extra $10 a day. Second, we get transportation. Right now, the average car payment is $716 a month, which is ridiculous. On the bright side, this is a great place to save a lot of money very quickly. Personally, my recommendation is that, unless you need a nice car for professional use, go and buy the most affordable, reliable, fuel-efficient car that you could possibly find, and then drive it into the ground. I would recommend Japanese cars like a Toyota or Honda. Those things last forever and are very good on gas. Remember, most cars hit their peak depreciation around year 6 or 7, so use that to your advantage, because then you'll be able to recoup as much value as possible throughout your ownership. On top of that, check your mileage to make sure you're not paying more than you need on your insurance premiums, which could be overpriced to begin with. So just by scaling back and shopping around, you should be able to save another $5 a day here. Third, we have taxes. Remember how I said that housing takes up the largest portion of the American budget? Well, that's not entirely true. It's actually taxes. It was reported that in the United States, the average single worker paid 30.5% of their income to taxes in 2022. This means that you're effectively working 4 months a year just to pay the government. That's why it's more important than ever to at least have a basic understanding of how the tax system works, so that you can take advantage of all the legal tax benefits available to you to save as much money as possible. From my experience, hiring a good accountant goes a long way in saving you a lot of money. A good accountant should save you a lot more than what they charge for their services. And by doing this, you should be able to save at least another $3 a day. Now let's talk about food. One study found that the average American spends $6,600 a year in this category, which works out to $550 a month. About 40% of that is eating out, at $220 a month. Now, instead of telling you to just stop eating out altogether, I'll share a more reasonable strategy that I use myself. If you're dining out or going to a restaurant or ordering food delivery, don't do it just out of laziness. However, if you want to go out with friends and family once a week or so to an affordable place that you could budget for, by all means do it. But stop lazy spending. Do it intentionally, plan it out in advance. By doing this, even if you're able to save just $3 a day, it begins adding up. And all of this money is something that you could use to put yourself ahead financially. Fifth, we also have debt repayment. It's said that the average American has $5,700 of credit card debt at an average of a 24% interest rate. That is $114 every single month that you're not paying off your bill in full. So instead, take the approach of doing anything you can to cut back and then taking that money to pay down any credit cards. Once that debt is paid off, you're going to have the entire amount left over to then save and invest however you want. But until you're completely out of debt, paying this down should be your biggest priority. And since we're tallying all of this up, for the average person, that would result in a savings of an extra $4 a day. And finally, sixth, we get apparel. Look, Americans are spending an average of $133 a month on clothing. And if that sounds like you, go and take a look at your closet and tell me how many of your clothes you actually end up wearing. If I were to guess, you probably wear the same few shirts and pants and shoes 90% of the time. Cut down on this, or at least reduce it by half. And by doing that, you'd be able to save an extra $2 a day. So just right there is your $27 a day in savings by cutting back, reducing your spending, and paying yourself first, which adds up to $10,000 in a year. But there is another way to save $10,000 a month. So far we've been playing the defensive game, but as they say, the best defense is a strong offense. If you're not willing to cut back and you don't want to resort to eating rice and beans every night, then you have to make more money. That's where a side hustle comes into the picture. Most people won't tell you this, but the internet has completely changed how people can earn money. I recently discovered a side hustle that literally anyone with a computer and internet connection can do anywhere in the world, yet 99% of the population has never even heard of it.
When I went to work for Standard Oil of California, I got paid by the month. And if I was a pilot flying for the airlines, I got paid by the month. And when I worked on straight commissions with Xerox, I got, basically commissions. But I realized from my rich dad talking to me, if I understood financially, I could make money 24/7 without working. That was the difference. To me, that makes a lot more sense than working hard all the time.
If you want to save $10,000 over the course of just 1 year without picking up a second job, this side hustle is the best way to do it. Check out the link in the description to learn more. And finally, since this is all money you're going to be saving, make sure you optimize it with a high-yield savings account, money market account, or CD. Right now, there are so many options that are currently paying between 4 and 5% interest, which means once you hit your $10,000 target, that is an extra $500 a year just for diligently saving and following some of the steps that are outlined here. If there's one key takeaway from this video, it's this. All of these steps start small, but they each build over time and end up making a huge positive impact on your finances. Now watch my video showing you 7 awesome side hustles that you should consider starting in 2024. You'll love it.